you've been awarded in 2014 the title of Chevalier, which means a knight, by the French Republic. Can you please tell us the background? How did you get this? How did the French Republic give you this title?
Right. So the Chevalier is given to people when it comes to foreigners who have made a specific contribution to the diffusion of French culture beyond its own national boundaries. I do French literature as well as Italian. I'm a professor of both French and Italian literature. I was the chairman of my department of French and Italian at Stanford University for 7 years. And in that capacity, I sponsored a number of events, conferences, and other sort of activities that were promoting French literary intellectual culture. Two of my colleagues were members of the French Academy, Michel Serres, René Girard, and all of my books have been published in French, and I've given lectures at the Collège de France in France, and I came to the attention of the people of the Chevalier Committee of the Arts and Letters, and someone nominated me, and I received this knighthood, if you want to call it that.
Congratulations. That's a fantastic title to have, especially outside of France.
But it's the one I'm most proud of, Chevalier de la République Française. Yeah.
That's fantastic. So I'd like to bring up one of your books, the Juvenescence. Right. And I read it. It's an amazing book. I don't do drugs or anything like that, but as I go through the book, I almost feel like a strong dose of caffeine, and I feel like it's very thought-provoking and it's very interesting. The first thing I want to ask you about is, in the beginning of the book, you talk about how our society is obsessed with creating the best for the youth, for the young people, and at the same time, it's waging a war against the young people by depriving them of many things in today's society, including being outdoors, enjoying nature, enjoying the past. Tell us about that. Tell us about your thoughts.
So this book, Juvenescence, the subtitle is A Cultural History of Our Age. So our age is our historical age on the one hand, but also how old are we in this historical age that we belong to? Because I'm convinced that in the Western world, at least, in the first world, we are far younger in mentality, lifestyles, behavior, and our looks than even a generation or two ago. If you read Balzac, the French author, 19th century French author, earlier 19th century, he wrote a book called La Femme de 30 ans, the woman of 30, the 30-year-old woman, in which he was trying to make a case that a 30-year-old woman's life is not necessarily over at all, that she still has things to look forward to. A 30-year-old woman today on the tennis courts at Stanford or something looks more like the daughter than the sister, let's say, of Balzac's thing. You look at pictures from the past. I even look at my father's yearbook, and when he was in high school, all these faces look like adults. And when I compare them to the undergraduates that I have at Stanford, I mean, the undergraduates look really like children. They still are children. And therefore, this is what I mean by juvenescence, that as we get older as a history and as a society, because we go back 2,000 years, we're at least 3,000 years old as a culture, we are in the process of also getting younger in many ways. We have a much more youthful culture than ever in history. So that, combined with this kind of exaltation and worship of youth, we live in a society where youth has become the model of emulation for the elders. This is a momentous cultural revolution. I mean, never before that I know of have the young served as the model for the older people. It's always been
the other way
around. Yeah. The young were always in a hurry to grow up because all the privileges and all the benefits and all the authority lay with adulthood. Now, older people are trying to hold on to their youth as much as they can. So this is a huge cultural paradigmatic shift in our culture. And so you would think that a culture that has this obsession with youth would be particularly favorable towards the young. But I claim that that is not the case at all. And if you'd like, I would, with your permission, I'll read just
Absolutely,
a little passage from the book where I write that we do not promote the cause of youth when we infantilize rather than educate desire, and then capitalize on its bad infinity, nor when we shatter the relative stability of the world on which cultural identity depends, nor when we oblige the young to inhabit a present without historical depth or density. The greatest blessing a society can confer on its young is to turn them into the heirs rather than the orphans of history. It is also the greatest blessing a society can confer on itself, for heirs rejuvenate the heritage by creatively renewing its legacies. Orphans, by contrast, relate to the past as an alien, unapproachable continent. If they relate to it at all, our age seems intent on turning the world as a whole into an orphanage for reasons that no one, least of all the author of this book, truly understands. So I think it's a terrible age to be young, strangely enough, because what the young need, above all, is a certain kind of safety. They need a lot of leisure time. They need, youth is nourished by access to nature, the wonder of nature and the natural world. And you have to be free to fail time and again. It's a learning process, failure. But it seems that we live in a society where none of these things are as readily available to the young as they used to be. Certainly our detachment from nature and the fact that now young people in the first world are living within the miniature world of their cell phone screens. I mean, this is not fruitful for the spirit of youth. It ages you very quickly.
Not to mention other worse habits of addiction and missing school and stay up all night playing games and whatever.
Well, exactly, yeah. So I part of my book, Juvenescence, is about this strange paradox that on the one hand, we worship youth, on the other hand, we seem not to do very much to promote the spirit of youthfulness among the young.
And on that note, I would even argue that we might be the last generation that even realizes the deprivation the youth has. In the future, they may not even think that, what outdoors, or what anything else other than the screen.
Right. I think you're right. When you deprive a generation or two of something, they eventually forget about its existence. And if you're not, as I mentioned earlier, you're not allowed to fail because, one bad year, you're not going to get into Harvard, you're not going to get into Yale, you're not going to, I think that we're not going to, the future generations might not even be aware of what has been lost in this process of juvenescence.